So it finally happened, huh? PewDiePie, one of the largest channels on YouTube, made a video about his experience transitioning to Linux, initial troubles and what he really likes about it. Alright, it wasn't really a secret anymore that he was doing it, but I personally still didn't expect a fully fledged video from him. In today's video, we're going to talk about some of the reasons he mentioned on why he chose Linux over Windows, what some of his hurdles were, if they apply to others as well, and ultimately how you can decide if Linux could offer you a better computing experience than Windows ever could. And let's get straight into it. Starting off with his first reason.
Windows talks to me like I'm a baby. You want Candy Crush on your computer? You wanna use Bing? Yes.
And he's not wrong, you know. Windows, despite costing you money, is also featuring capabilities for advertisers to basically nest their applications or a download for them right into the operating system. Sure, some could argue that it's also a bit of marketing Windows itself, like, hey look, I can also run this or that app. But honestly, in the end, it's about selling you something. And this trend is something that beautifully transitions into the search problems that Windows has, whereas settings, files and similar often push you towards an online search via Bing. They could bake all their help articles into Windows itself if their search isn't able to find something, and yet they don't. Like the Windows search often not being able to find certain things, even if spelled correctly, is nothing new. But with AI making its way into Windows, this poor implementation actually helps to attract users into considering a Copilot subscription down the line that manages to find those files just fine. On Linux you don't need any of that in the first place though, since the search just works as intended. But it's not just Microsoft's approach of constantly serving their users ads or make them trackable more easily, but the whole design philosophy of Windows is built around the assumption that the user does not know what they are doing. This is where you constantly get administrator prompts that ask you if you're sure that you want to do this, or why some folders are thoroughly protected, even from them. Sure, many bring the argument that Linux does the same, but this is actually not the same thing. Linux implementation of installing system-wide packages is out of security and not out of caution, which is the reason on why Windows doesn't ask for a password every time. It's just a warning for administrators, which becomes apparent if you deliberately do something that requires elevated permissions. Next up was of course customization. Who would have thought? Linux is customizable, but it's not just that you can tweak a certain desktop to your liking, you already get to choose various different experiences right off the bat. These so-called desktop environments either look slightly different, have their own application ecosystem, or focus on very specific workflows and use cases. You can essentially choose which one looks and feels right to you, but it then also serves you as a baseline if you want to customize it further. Some like the GNOME desktop environment because of its quite advanced overview mode, but still like to use a traditional taskbar, so they just use an extension to achieve that. Others might not even care for that, but rather start off with an experience that is much closer to something they might know already. It's just dependent on what you want your PC to look and feel like. It isn't dictated by some corporation that tries to serve a somewhat decent experience to everyone. On Linux you get what you need and only what you need. Don't like this pre-installed calendar? Just exchange it. You just have so much more control over your system. If you are more tech savvy, practically all of the control. From updates to the version of the desktop, everything is yours, so that you don't have to work around annoying quirks. Speaking of quirks though, something that PewDiePie did mention in his video is of course application support. Be it some proprietary configuration software for your mouse that doesn't have a Linux counterpart for all devices, be it Photoshop, Microsoft Office, video editing programs or just some random app. Some applications are just not available on Linux yet because the user base is just too small to make an impact. This of course is fixable over time, and Linux does have a lot of programs that are officially supported or good in their own way, but they are not quite the same. Switching from something like Premiere Pro to DaVinci Resolve or an open source editor takes effort and time, and not everyone wants to deal with that. However, PewDiePie did have an interesting idea that I didn't even think about up until now. This is Linux and open source, of course you can customize a lot. GIMP, for example, is often named as one of the best alternatives to Photoshop, but its user interface, many functions and templates are just not quite the same. However, you can customize the hotkeys to make it behave more like Photoshop, change the icons or the whole theme altogether. It also supports plugins, there are custom patched versions, and this applies to other software solutions as well that already feel more like a Photoshop anyway. On Linux you just have a lot of options. What I also really liked about this video was the fact that he showed that it is possible to revive an older laptop. PewDiePie went for Argent Hyperland, which is honestly quite impressive by itself, given that he's not really the most tech-savvy person in the world, and he loved it. The point here is to not view Linux as that gold marble that will suddenly increase your laptop's performance for heavy tasks like gaming, video editing or whatever else, but it's to rather make it usable again in its own form. Like, you won't gain any actual big improvements when installing Linux on a device like that, but the overall smoothness, loading times and maybe even battery life, depending on the model, can be improved, especially if you try to also focus on changing up the experience a bit. Hyperland is no traditional desktop experience, and it's not trying to be, but if you want a more traditional experience, then you have the option to choose a different desktop environment or even customize it that way. Nothing is trying to stop you or tell you that you shouldn't do that. However, there were some negative points in his video as well. One of them was hardware support, which often also relates to some of the software missing as well. Think G-Hub for example. Generally speaking, you can install Linux on almost everything, but it doesn't necessarily guarantee that every feature will work. Most of the stuff that doesn't is either caused by poor support from the company that created that product, think Broadcom and their Wi-Fi chips for example, or they treat Linux as a second-class citizen, whereas Windows is getting drivers earlier and much more polished. The only real solution here is to just gain more users. Like, if you hear of the hardware problems on Linux, then many users get scared away, even though it mightn't even apply to them. But now, let's answer the real question. Why use Linux in the first place? If you have a working Windows system, why would you switch? Well, honestly, the answer is quite simple. If you can do everything on a Linux PC that you could do on Windows, why would you settle for a proprietary solution that serves you ads, embeds random tools that you don't want, and just has so many quirks? Given that Linux itself is more interesting due to its various desktop environments and customization options, it just generally makes your PC easier to work with. If Linux already covers all of your needs, or at least close to them, and your hardware is well supported, then it's already kind of better than Windows in every way. Do you have to switch? No, of course not. Should you? Well, honestly, that's not a question that anyone can answer for you. For me personally, Linux works far better than Windows. Not necessarily in the sense of it's so much faster or that it supports something that Windows doesn't, but rather because it just feels so much more efficient to use. I don't need AI to find my files. I can adjust my user experience better to the end device that I'm currently using, easily create whole setup scripts to redeploy my operating system from scratch should I ever switch to a new PC, and I can even play most of my video games. While not everything works as I would like it to, realistically speaking, I don't actually miss anything from my system, and I simply enjoy the experience, which just feels a lot better to me than Windows ever could. And I'm happy that yet another huge YouTuber has been convinced that Linux has immense potential. And that's where I'll leave it. So what do you think of PewDiePie's video if you watched it already? Do you think he will stay on Linux, move back to Windows, or switch to something else entirely? Please let us know down in the comments. Before I end this video, I quickly wanted to mention that if you want to support the channel, make even better videos, then please feel free to check out our membership program as well as our online shop, whereas each sale helps to support various open source projects. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you've liked it, then please make sure to show it with a like, and also don't forget to subscribe to the channel so that you don't miss out on any future Linux videos. Thanks again, and all that's left to say now is good morning, good afternoon or good evening, wherever you are. I'll see you around.